Good evening, America. It is 7 p.m. Monday, July 20th, and this is Queer News Tonight, the world's first live LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news.
Watch as we bring you these and other stories from the LGBTQ headlines. Tonight, the gayest place on planet Earth, South Florida and Florida, are burning in COVID-19. Cases cross 350,000, and Florida will have the greatest number of cases of any state by next week, including the beginning of the pandemic, New York, if projections come true. Today, more than 100 Florida hospitals have no available ICU beds.
LGBTQ ally and civil rights hero Representative John Lewis dies at 80, and the Oregon governor wants federal officers to leave Portland.
Illinois family won't have to repaint their rainbow-striped house, and Polish LGBT-Free town weighs risk of losing EU funds. So good evening, America. It is 7 p.m. Monday, July 20th, 2020. It is time to queer up the news. We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight. Tonight on the world's first live daily queer evening news show.
Tonight's news about the gay community and the news from an LGBTQ perspective. Are our gay stories important to you? In headlines, politics, entertainment, gay culture, travel, religion, and more. Reported by respected anchors.
Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight. Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. We are live. This is an unedited, anything can happen. Tonight, very likely is going to.
It's Monday.
This evening, we bring you the news of and a perspective from the LGBTQ community. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and this is my co-guest anchor, David Hopkins, and my co-guest anchor, Chef Josie. So let's queer up the news. Tonight we bring you beginning with queer headlines. The LGBTQ community in America is diverse. The LGBTQ community around the world is vast, and we bring you the bullet points of queer news for today, Monday, July 20th, 2020. We begin by queering up the world in reporting a new strain of homophobia is taking hold in Ireland. Watch this.
It shouldn't take more than just turn of your head, a breath, to say, no, Peter Tatchell is wrong. He's utterly, completely wrong on child abuse. Unfortunately, Rodrigo Gorman was being cosseted by the mainstream media here, who actually operate a form of homophobia. They accuse us, I'm a gay man, and they accuse people like me of homophobia for questioning O'Gorman. The real homophobia is to treat a gay politician differently from a straight one, to cosset them, to treat them as special butterflies that can't be questioned. That's homophobia.
In an update to a story we previously covered July 7th, the targeting of the new children's ministry minister, Roderick O'Gorman, who is gay, by far-right groups has been linked to increased abuse of the LGBTQ community. Tony Walsh, a gay rights activist, knows more than most about homophobia in Ireland. He has fought for it for 40 years, was on the forefront even when homosexuality was illegal in Ireland, and he has a message to the LGBTQ community. It is time to engage homophobes, not simply scorn them, because they are being forced to the extremes by religious zealots who only have one aim: to eradicate LGBTQ rights, and there is nothing left to stop these extremist views from being the norm for society.
And when we discussed this situation earlier, it was an online group that was targeting the new children's minister. Now the targeting is because he has posted an Instagram post with him next to Peter Tatchell, who's been criticized for his pro-underage sex comments in the past.
You know, listen, as a gay community, as gay leaders, as gay religious leaders, we have to be very careful who we associate with. And we teach our kids, you are who you associate with, you are who your friends are. That all being said, you know, I think that the statement is so true right now. We have to engage. The LGBTQ community, it's time for us to step up and stand up with courage.
It is absolutely no longer a time to burn. It is a time to discuss and try to find compromise and commonality.
Next week, we're up the USA. LGBTQ ally and civil rights hero, Representative John Lewis, dies at 80. Watch this.
But we need someone who's going to stand up, and speak out for the people that need help, for people being discriminated against. And it doesn't matter whether they're black or white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. I was born in rural Alabama, not very far from where Senator Sessions. Some of these young children may never, ever see their mother or their fathers again. That's not right, it's not fair, and it's not just.
It is with heavy hearts that we report civil rights hero and staunch LGBTQ ally John Lewis has died at the age of 80 after a battle of pancreatic cancer. Lewis, who served 17 terms in Congress as a Democratic representative of Atlanta, the congressman was a longtime ally of the LGBTQ community, supporting same-sex marriage in the early 2000s, more than a decade prior to the Supreme Court decision for marriage equality. In an editorial, he wrote, quote, "I have fought too hard and too long against discrimination based on race and color, not to stand up against discrimination based on sexual orientation."
Well, number one issue for me is the sit-in that he held right post the Pulse massacre to support the LGBT community, and it went on 24 hours a day to try to force the consideration of gun rights. And he created national and international news in doing it, in standing up for the LGBTQ community. And tonight I'm thinking about what he did for all of us in Pulse.
I'm certain that there will be no hero quite like John Lewis again in our lifetime. I hold space for those young people being affected by this crisis, that they rise to the level of heroism and courage that a man like John Lewis and his legacy leaves behind.
And with him, we see a passing of part of history. He was present for Bloody Sunday, all the way through the civil rights movement, including, as Al mentioned, our issues at Pulse. He was a hero to anyone who's ever been downtrodden.
Next, let's queer up the USA. Mary Trump felt unable to come out after her grandmother called Elton John a faggot. Watch this.
All right, Mary just sat down with Rachel Maddow, and Mary Trump made some stunning accusations, the president's niece. Take a listen to this.
I have to press you on it a little bit, just to ask if the president, if your uncle was an exception to that in your family, or if you ever heard him express either use anti-Semitic slurs or the N-word or other racist slurs or other sentiments like that. Was it? Or do you mean this was an ambient thing in your family, but you can't say that you ever heard it from him, or did you hear it from him too?
Oh yeah, of course I did. And I don't think that should surprise anybody, given how virulently racist he is today.
In 1997, Mary planned to marry a woman in Maui, Hawaii. But a week before the wedding, the Trump family got together because Donald Trump's father, Fred Trump, was on his deathbed. During their time together, Mary's relationship with her grandmother was strained due to passing comment she issued while the family discussed Princess Diana and her recent death. She said, quote, "It's a disgrace they're letting that little faggot Elton John sing at Diana's service." Ultimately, Mary Trump went through with her wedding without telling her family, and they still live in New York City to this day with the daughter they raised.
I have been glued to Mary Trump's comments. I've purchased her book.
Oh.
and I'm reading her book, and it's a fascinating story of how privileged power can corrupt both ethically and morally.
The whole thing is making the Trump family sound like the villains out of a sitcom from the 80s. Like it's like Dallas or something like that come to life, and it's both terrifying that these are who this person's running our country now, and sad that these people were destroyed.
All I know is, Al, I'm going to borrow the book when you're done.
Well, I'm going to take a page out of Trump's book and I will sell, or better yet, I will rent you the book when I am finished.
Okay.
We queer up the USA in reporting Oregon governor wants federal officers to leave Portland. Watch this.
Tonight, the ACLU and Oregon's governor are accusing the Trump administration of abusing power. That's after video emerged on Twitter apparently showing federal officers dressed in camouflage grabbing protesters off the streets of Portland and using unmarked cars. Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf says state and local officials are to blame for not putting an end to anti-police protests, which have continued in Portland for nearly 50 straight nights.
For almost 2 months, protesters have been going on in Portland, protests. But recently, they caught the attention of the President of the United States, who spied an opportunity to create a dramatic confrontation that would advance his re-election message of law and order. So this week, federal officers came to Portland and began arresting people. Local officials don't want them to do this, and for very good reason. It's apparently making the situation actually worse. In an interview, Governor Kate Brown of Oregon told us that her contacts with Trump administration officials about the situation had convinced her that they are not interested in problem solving, and this has nothing to do with public safety.
No, the PACT Act that Trump passed on July 1st allows Department of Homeland Security to arrest anybody under suspicion of possibly wanting to deface a federal monument or property. And he's using this to extend basically a military police arm to break up these protests. And it's just going to incite things and make it worse.
You know, there's a very delicate balance between our right to protest and public safety, and now a crazed administration. It's time for our local leaders, these governors of our states, our city mayors, to get to the table right now and start creating solution and start figuring out, negotiating the terms to the legislation that needs to be added to our lives. It's time for real change. I don't know where this is going.
Who would have ever thought that we would be talking about Portland, Oregon becoming part of the Banana Republic? The military has been called in with no identification, with no authority that anyone is aware of, either on the state level or the local level. And they come in not police cars or in military vehicles, but in Ford and Chevy vans. It's a very strange time in America.
Okay, LGBTQ America. Queer News Tonight will say it out loud. Who is afraid of Trump not leaving the office quietly? Watch this.
In general, not talking about November, are you a good loser?
I'm not a good loser. I don't like to lose. I don't lose too often. I don't like to lose.
But are you gracious?
You don't know until you see. It depends. I think mail-in voting is going to rig the election. I really do.
Are you suggesting that you might not accept the results of the election?
I have to see. Look, Hillary Clinton asked me the same thing.
No, I asked you the same thing in the debate. There is a tradition in this country, in fact, one of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner. Not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Donald Trump's presidency is melting before our eyes. In the back of our mind, we're beginning to worry. Will it really be that simple? Trump is already signaling that he believes mail-in voting, which he himself has done, could lose him the election and that he won't accept the results. When he threatened that he wouldn't accept the results if he lost in 2016, it was far less frightening than a sitting president refusing to step aside, as he now has a lot more power to try to use to not leave the office, since doing so will very likely lead to the new Democratic Attorney General holding him accountable for a laundry list of possible federal offenses. Seems all too reasonable to be afraid what this man will do next.
We're in a very dangerous place in our country, in U.S. politics, in the history, and where we're moving forward in our society, in our politics. We need to figure out right now. We need to be prepared. everyone who, all the attorneys, where are you right now? This man seems like he has free reign over and making decisions, doing whatever he wants to do. We need the attorneys in place right now and getting prepared for this shit show. Excuse my French.
It's interesting to me for the LGBTQ community. This is among one of the most watched stories in the world. And I would remind you, I encourage you to tune in to Gay Town Hall this coming Thursday at 8 p.m. This is going to be the lead story of discussion and quite a bit of attention by all of the hosts of Queer Town Hall, Gay Town Hall, are going to discuss this topic.
What scares me is he shunned all of our allies from democratic nations while fawning over dictators. That's not a good sign.
Next, let's queer up gay culture. Illinois' family won't have to repaint rainbow-striped house. Officials in Western Illinois City have told a homeowner that the vibrant colors on her family's rainbow-striped house can stay, despite an earlier order that she repaint the residence. Moline City officials said Thursday in a hand-delivered letter to Taylor Berg that she does not have to paint over the broad purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red horizontal stripes that run top to bottom down her two-story wood frame house. Berg said she didn't think the colors would offend anyone. She has two sons, ages 5 and 10, who help paint the house. Her 10-year-old son has cerebral palsy, is nonverbal, and deaf.
We queer up sports tonight by reporting that NASCAR fans booed Bubba Wallace. Cheer his crash at Confederate flag-adorned track. Wallace was at Tennessee's Bristol Motor Speedway for NASCAR's Cup Series All-Star race over the weekend. It was one of the first racing events that featured fans in the stands since the coronavirus pandemic caused state governments to limit large gathering. Backlash over him standing up for basic human rights was obvious, with loud boos by the Confederate flag-waving attendees, even though such flags are now disallowed at events. In the most disgusting display of the day, when Wallace crashed into a wall during his qualifying run, the crowd erupted into cheers, showing off just how classy and civilized they really were.
They need to leave my husband alone. But next we queer up the USA. Gay bar issues apology after bartender wears blackface coronavirus mask to work. Number 9 in Logan Circle is a popular DC gay bar, but on Friday, July 10th, a picture was posted on Facebook of one of its bartenders wearing a blackface coronavirus face mask. Cameron Burrell, who posted the photo, wrote, quote, "DC peeps, this is a bartender at number 9 right now, like live and in person, serving up. This is a blackface mask, racist cartoon." As the post began to circulate on social media, number 9 was forced to issue an apology. The gay bar insisted the bartender had no idea the mask was racist blackface caricature and said, quote, he was horrified and removed it when he found out.
Next, let's queer up the USA. Florida man charged with criminal transmission of HIV after he spit on a paramedic. Police in South Daytona, Florida, have accused 41-year-old Julio Rivera of intentionally trying to spread HIV by spitting his allegedly brownish-red saliva at local paramedics and firefighters. They claim that Rivera revealed he was HIV positive before spitting at them numerous times and making death threats. There is no evidence that HIV can be transmitted by saliva alone, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Coming into contact with someone's bodily fluids on your skin would also not transmit the virus, as the proteins in saliva prevent the virus from transmission. Still, police booked Rivera on criminal transmission of HIV and several other charges in Florida law. Perhaps the officers should do more research before enforcing archaic laws.
We queer up the world in reporting Polish LGBTQ free town weighs the risk of losing EU funds. Surrounded by the fields of roses and lavender in tranquil eastern Poland, some residents of the village of Kążoławia feel the European Union may try is trying to blackmail them. The LGBTQ-free zones have raised eyebrows in Brussels, with the European Commission signaling to regional authorities, including the town, that it may curb EU aid to areas that discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation. Gay rights have become a hot-button issue in Poland since the right-wing Law and Justice Party came to power 5 years ago, pledging to defend traditional family values.
Next week, Queer Up Vote 2020. Rainbow Wave 3.0, record number of LGBTQ candidates are on 2020 ballots. Since about 2018, we've been discussing rainbow waves, or election cycles that boast a large group of LGBTQ candidates getting voted into office. That continued in 2019 when over 80 queer and trans candidates won elections. Now a new report from the LGBTQ Victory Institute says a history-making 850 LGBTQ candidates are running for office this year. This comes in addition to the 843 current LGBTQ elected officials. Although this is a sign of progress, it's also important to note that our community is still very unrepresented in the halls of power in America. Hopefully someday there will be tens of thousands of LGBTQ members representing communities across America.
In America, we remind you that one of our own, Chef Josie, is running for mayor of Wilton Manors, Florida, the gayest place on planet Earth. Next, let's catch up on all of the news surrounding COVID-19 with our Quarantine Quickies. The first story tonight is our daily reporting of coronavirus facts, especially important to the LGBTQ community. First, we report on coronavirus case numbers. Based on standard acceptance of 7% of population of the LGBTQ community, the world's LGBT COVID-19 cases stand at 1,026,873, while America's LGBT COVID-19 cases stand at 272,908. We remind you that America is ground zero of this pandemic. America is only 4.4% of the world's population, but today we account for 26.5% of all of the world's cases. Next, we report on coronavirus deaths. The world's LGBTQ COVID-19 deaths now stand at a staggering 42,667, while America's LGBTQ COVID-19 deaths has crossed the iconic number of 10,000. The USA is 23.5% of all of the world's deaths.
Quarantine Quickies. Why is America failing in COVID-19 compared to the rest of the industrialized world? Watch this.
It was just a month ago, amid concerns about rising case numbers, that Vice President Mike Pence wrote an op-ed saying, "Such panic is overblown. We are winning the fight against an invisible enemy." No, we're not. We averaged the WHO's case numbers from Monday to Friday of this past week. France averaged 455 new cases. Germany averaged 408 new cases. Italy, 182. In the United States, NBC News recorded an average of 69,060 new cases per day, with the country topping 70,000 new cases 2 of the past 3 days. Now, does that sound as if we're winning this fight? How did this happen? We are the richest country in human history, with an unmatched medical infrastructure and a literate, educated populace. Yet today, we stand uniquely helpless among industrialized countries in the fight against COVID-19. A world that once looked up to us to do the impossible now averts its eyes over our failure to do the possible.
The numbers are in, and it is horrible for the United States. While other Western countries report reduced new cases numbering in the hundreds, the policies driven by President Donald Trump have America hurtling towards more than 70,000 new cases a day, with Florida on track for having the most cases of any state by as early as next week. Republican governors in most states are struggling to implement restrictions that places such as New York had months ago, as they realize the full scope of Trump's inaction upon the country.
The reality is that this is a mind-blowing, staggering number to even process. You know, you can have whatever political views you care to choose, and you can back whoever you'd like to. But the reality is that there have been facts, all research and data to support decisions the whole entire way. Guys, just look at the numbers. Those are the facts. You think we're doing it the right way? I don't think so.
Italy was ground zero of Europe's pandemic. Spain then became Europe's ground zero of their pandemic. Both countries combined averaged daily transmissions of about 400 cases, while the United States had 70,000 a day. What are we talking about over masks?
And a lot of those countries do have much smaller populations than the U.S., but the per capita infection rate is still higher here than almost anywhere else in the world.
Next, quarantine quickies. San Francisco supervisors to ease limitations that would allow bathhouses to return to the city. Watch this.
But now a San Francisco supervisor says it's time to bring back bathhouses. Rafael Mandelman wants to remove regulations that prohibit private rooms at bathhouses and require them to monitor sexual activity. In San Francisco, the spread of HIV/AIDS slowed to under 200 new cases a year. But there's mixed reaction to this proposal, even in his own district.
The restrictions were put in place for HIV specifically, so I think, those should be lifted.
It reminds me a lot of when we weren't allowed to donate blood. Mm-hmm. And I think it needs to be changed.
I don't think that they should start that again. Because that's when the AIDS epidemic happened and all my friends are dead. So it's not a good idea.
Now, if Supervisor Mandelman's legislation passes, it would require bathhouses to make available safe sex supplies and education materials as well.
San Francisco city supervisors are poised to vote on a proposed ordinance next week that would allow bathhouses to return to the city more than 3 decades after restrictions were imposed to try and stem the spread of AIDS. More than 3 decades ago. For the better part of those years since the restrictions went into effect, the city's health department has sought to enforce them, meaning that all commercial sex clubs are prohibited from having closed or locked doors, cubicles, or rooms, and staff are required to monitor activity on a regular basis, an attempt to try and ensure that patrons were using condoms. Various adult sex venues have continued to operate in the city since that time, but have been required to operate under those restrictions.
Proof of the world we're living in is if we did this story in July of 2019, this would be making national headlines, and there would probably be large-scale celebration in the LGBT community. But we're living in the middle of COVID. That's it.
Both of the bathhouses here in Fort Lauderdale are open right now. I think there needs to be a safe place for consensual sex, and I would much rather go somewhere where there is public around than meet someone online where I might get mugged or attacked. That being said, safety is number one. Yes, it's COVID right now, and these policies were archaic from the HIV/AIDS epidemic, so the handing out condoms there is a step in the right direction. People know what to do these days.
I think our focus is on the wrong thing right now. Like Al said, if this was pre-COVID, we could have a deeper conversation. But the reality is, there are so many other issues we need to be focused on right now. The last thing that San Francisco should be focused on is whether or not to open bathhouses. Sorry.
And that includes wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Next, we queer up our segment called Good News. After we finish our headlines, we want to report on something that made us smile today in Good News.
Good news. The LGBTQ community loves bears, so here's a big bear. Now, I've been known to hang out with bears. However, they're not like the bear in this clip, who gave a woman quite a fright before she decided to do the natural thing and take a selfie with the big guy. We love bears, so this is good news. Watch.
No. Hey. Oso. No.
No se muevan.
No. Hey, no. No. Hey. Oso. No.
Se mordió. ¿Se está mordiendo?
Ven, oso.
Vente caminando ya.
Caminen despacito nada más.
Tonight we're broadcasting from our studio set in the middle of the World AIDS Museum and Education Center. The museum is in Wilton Manors and Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
We joke we're coming from the gayest place on planet Earth.
I want to see one of those bears on Wilton Drive right here.
There's lots of bears on Wilton Drive.
Yeah.
We'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set in this living museum possible. We end tonight's broadcast with what we call the Big Finish. These are short story mentions of LGBTQ news or news with a gay perspective. So here we go. First on Queer News Tonight's The Big Finish. Linkin Park speaks out against Trump after In the End appears in a campaign video on Twitter.
It starts with one thing. You don't know why. Doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind. We designed this rhyme to remind you to vote on November 3rd.
Yes, run right now. If you are not registered to vote, what are you waiting for? November 3rd. And take as many friends with you to the poll as you can.
That's right. And vote often, Donald. Vote often. I think by the time he is out of office, there are going to be more artists opposing Trump than those who allow him to use the music. And personally, it makes me want to buy something from Linkin Park, just as another screw you to the Don. In the Big Finish, did you see the pictures over the weekend? Superman Henry Cavill builds a PC in pandemic.
We actually watched the video in the office on Friday, and I don't know what part turns me on more. The $1,200 GeForce RTX 2800 Ti graphics card or the size of his arms. Call me, I'd totally be up for a LAN party.
Okay, well, you know I'm always up for something nerdy, but I have to say I haven't seen this one. And the way you're...
Oh, too bad.
Don't worry, it's on my list.
I sometimes mention gaming, and now I am reminded that Henry Cavill loves gaming. So do I now. I know all about, dragons and spaceships and guns. Yeah, I'm a super big video game nerd. Please play with me, Mr. Cavill. And by the way, that was in my best not creepy voice. Did I succeed?
That's all your voices.
Did I succeed?
I don't know.
Let's finish. Walmart teams up with Queer Eye to release exclusive home furniture line.
This is for the new show, Tacky Eye for the Cheap Guy.
Oh my God. Well, so that's so hilarious because, I've been telling my wife that when she leaves the house, she's been looking like kind of girl I'd pick up in a Walmart parking lot. So, I got to tell her about this new, this new furniture line.
And that's coming from Chef Josie. All right. So normally I would say I'm a bit suspicious of Walmart, but between this, mandating masks in all over their stores, and banning the sales of Confederate flags, they're kind of on a bit of a winning streak. Sorry, Bernie, not hating on Walmart today. The Big Finish. Meet Le Fab Trop, the first gay dads on a Disney reality TV show.
I mean, it was a cute Bollywood dance number with their daughter. I mean, I'd rather see more of this and less of the tacky Walmart furniture.
Well, all I know is now I have a new show to add to my new Disney Plus subscription. So it's, something to update myself with.
Disney Plus and you bubble.
Well, that's the thing that my wife really loves.
Like
I'm not sure how much I will be celebrating anything in reality TV these days, given the fact that reality TV spawned Donald Trump. But I guess these guys are progress, I guess. Big Finish. Happy 2,377th birthday to our favorite sex addict and totally gay, Alexander the Great.
So this picture of Alexander and Aristotle is like ancient gay porn. I love toga parties.
Oh, well, I did. So that's what the problem was. I remember Alexander the Great. He had this short man complex, right?
Yes, he had other issues too.
Oh, well, see, now that explains it all.
I have great respect for Alexander the Great. I, too, have conquered the known world, except I'm talking about something a lot more fun than land.
He made them.
Did you know that historians believe that Alexei may have been the first known gay man? He had fabulous clothes, he adored good food and wine, loved music and drama, and his greatest passion was travel. Oh, and by the way, there was the love of handsome men to have sex with. Yep, first recorded gay man. The big finish. On this day in 1969, Neil Armstrong walks on the moon.
You know, half a century later, and he is still one of the only people who could stamp another planet on their passport.
Oh, that's a good one.
Don't encourage that. It's like feeding the bear.
Well, listen.
I didn't bring donuts this week.
There was a time in our life when we were forging forward, when we would be willing to travel into the unknown, when we'd be willing to have the kind of courage to create a new world. Guys, this is the moment, okay? Let's get back there, okay? We need to step on some new moons. We need to visit new planets. We need to make sure that this planet is still around in the next 4 years.
I agree with you completely. The moon landing is one of mankind's greatest achievements. It is the epitome of what historians call 20th century American exceptionalism. When Kennedy challenged all Americans, including the LGBTQ community in 1962, I remind you of what he said, with absolutely no chance of making it happen. He said, "We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they're easy and not because they are hard, but because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win." Today, 51 years ago, Kennedy's vision was realized. It fills me with joy and also some sadness. How great we dreamed. But 51 years later, I wonder if American exceptionalism is behind us. I hope not.
And that's today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first daily LGBTQ evening news show.
Remember, if it's important to the LGBTQ community, it's important to Queer News Tonight. But you must help us. Click subscribe on YouTube and share this news.
We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines, and this is the only source of live LGBTQ news in the entire world. Your community needs your support.
You are not alone. We will get through this crisis.
We are here with you, and this is Queer News Tonight.
Thank you for joining us, and I'm Al Ferguson, and on behalf of Chef Josie and David Hopkins, we will see you daily and tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Good night, America.
Good night.